Hi everyone, in this lecture we will improve availability of our gateway and config server by adding one more instance for each of them in Docker. Let's first add a new instance for gateway in services YAML file. We will simply add a new compose definition and name the services as gateway service 1 and gateway service 2 and assign different ports. In the fallback controller, I will print the logs so that we can follow the instances on logs. For config server, we can either use config first or discovery first approach, where we choose to use config first approach previously. Note that for discovery first approach, we would need to set Spring Cloud config discovery enabled configuration variable to true in all clients and make server a discovery client. This approach will require an extra round trip at startup to fetch the config, but then adding new instances is easy as discovery will handle it. With config first approach, we can just add another instance and specify both instances in client's config server definition for high availability. So here we do that and define a new service for config server in services YAML file and update all services to use both config server instances in the config server URL. Note that the second URL won't be used if first one is already up and running. In case the first instance is down, here we added a second container for high availability. Alright, with multiple instances of a same service, we will see a problem in the logs. Since we use the same name for the log file, both services will use the same log file instead of writing to separate files. To solve this issue, we will now add an application name configuration variable to use it in the logback.xml file. Here one important thing is that we need to define this config variable in Bootstrap YAML file, not in the application YAML file, because logback will need this variable in Bootstrap phase. So let's first define a config variable log.applicationName in Bootstrap YAML file of each service. Now we will update the logback.xml file and use Spring property tag to get this variable into logback. Note that to be able to use Spring configuration variable inside logback configuration, we need to rename the logback files to logback-spring so that this logback configuration will be loaded after loading the application config. So please rename it to logback-spring. Great, let's change logback files for each service accordingly. Finally, we will pass this config as an environment variable in services YAML file for each instance. This way we can now distinguish even the different instances of the same service, as we can simply give a name to log file through configuration. Alright, as we always do, let's now run maven install command, and then run the docker compose up command to run all the services. We can check the logs in docker logs folder now, and we should see separate files for different instances of the same service. Let's once more query some data in web client and check the logs. Great, everything still seems to be working. Alright, I will see you in the next section.